Passage planning. Okay, so guys, what I'm not going to do this week is literally do a passage plan for you. What we're talking about is passage planning as a general topic, and then how and what we put into passage planning, not literally putting pencil to paper and saying, okay, this is how you exit, this is how you enter report. Those are specific topics. So passage planning is actually a culmination of tidal streams, tidal calculations, all of those things when you're putting pencil to paper, okay? But what I'm going to talk about is what we think about if you're just going to cross the channel or if you're going to cross the Atlantic, you know, all those sort of topics that potential skippers would need to know and make a list of before going to sea, whether it's just for a day or for an entire crossing. So what goes into a passage plan? Basic pilotage. Now, basic pilotage as a whole is getting in and out of ports. So basic pilotage and what we'd think about there. Navigational considerations, victualling. Obviously, for those who don't know the word victualling, it basically means what we put on board. Safe haven considerations. So if you're doing a trip, you want to have safe havens. And a safe haven is basically, it's not part of your route. It's where you would stop if something happened. And then keeping a navigational log. Okay, so basic ideas, passage plan. What is a passage plan? What will we be looking at as a passage plan? It's planning a passage, or a voyage planning is a procedure to develop a complete description of the vessel's voyage from start to finish before you go. That's the big trick. How you get in and out, what's going to happen when you're out there, what can you do for emergencies, how much stores do I need, etc., etc., etc. It's basically doing your entire trip before you leave, okay? So this includes leaving the dock and or harbor area, the en route portion of your passage, and then the approach and the destination and where you're mooring at the end. So all these things are going to be thought of before you go. It also includes victualling, okay? And as I said, victualling is everything you want to put on board. Water, fuel, food, clothing, spares, first aid, emergency aid, bedding, etc., 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 etc. All the things you put on board. And then the crew, who are you taking with you? That's also part of your plan. The ability of your crew, the age. Have you got a 12-year-old, a 10-year-old on board? The gender, okay? Have you got all boys, or do you need to make sure you've got facilities for girls? The seaworthiness of your crew. Are they liable to suffer from seasickness? And then watch systems. What are you going to do with your crew once they're on board? These are all things that go into a passage plan. To start with, I thought, well, let's leave the port. So pilotage, okay? Pilotage is navigation where you can bump into things. If you're in the middle of the Atlantic, you wouldn't be piloting. You'd just be doing nav. So pilotage is specifically where you can bump into things. Okay, so that's knowing where and when you can make safe passage in and out of ports. Okay, so that's pretty obvious. Have you got the tide? Have you got the wind? Is it safe? Is it too much traffic, etc.? And along coastal coastlines. A lot of that can be pilotage. And obviously into any safe havens or just going back into a port. Okay, so factors that we take into account. The first thing a pilotage is you want to have it accessed on deck. So you will have notes scribbled. You don't want to be running up and down in a harbor trying to navigate. You want to have it pre-done neatly so you can literally stand on deck and go out knowing everything. So the first thing you take into account is your tide. If you think of ports like St. Peter Port in the Isle of Jersey, there's a bar there, okay, that stops you getting in and out at low water. So can you get in and out? What times can you get in and out? Okay, your tide must be included in your passage plan. Okay, the other thought is your tidal stream. Okay, your tidal stream, sorry, I'll go back one. Your tidal stream is, are you going against the tide when leaving port, or are you coming into the tide when leaving port? If you're going against it, you're going to do half the speed. If you're going with it, you're going to shoot out of a port quite quickly. So you want to know these factors. Is it a very dense traffic harbor? Okay, so are you going to be sitting in a corner waiting while there's lots of boats moving? I don't know if any of you have ever seen the Medina River when it's busy. And the Medina River goes into Cowes on the Isle of Wight. When that's busy, you can sit and wait half an hour just to cross it. So you want to know what the density is like and what's going on. This is a stock photo that I found, and it gives you an idea of yachts, fishing boats, etc., etc. In England, it's slightly different, where marinas tend to be away from this lot. The rest of the world have all of this lot mixed in together. Okay, visibility obviously makes a huge difference to your pilotage. Can you see where the hell you're going? And or is it going to be day or night when you have to leave? Are you going to be arriving at nighttime? Are you going to be leaving at nighttime because of the tide? Okay, you need to know the local regulations of where you're leaving. What is the harbor's call sign on what channel? And the same thing again for re-entering a harbor and or any safe havens. There's nothing worse than a harbor master getting on the radio to you and saying, pull in, you're not obeying my rules, you're not allowed to leave because you haven't called them. Okay, and as I said, day or night. Now, with planning, your tide and the day you want to leave might force you to leave at night or in the early hours of the morning. It also might be the reverse, where you want to arrive in daylight because you're going into a port you don't know. So you would rather leave the port you knowing at nighttime to make sure you arrive at the other end during the day. The legalities. Okay, so now you're going across to France and you're taking 2 South Africans with you. They will have to enter France with passport control. The fact that the English can just go in and out without a problem, or the Irish for that matter, not a problem. But you take a South African with you, you've got to know the legalities of passport control. Don't have someone come down to your boat and say, what's going on here, and get 2 of your crew arrested. They won't be well pleased with you. You must obviously know what their local emergency numbers are and their VHF channels. Have them handy, have them ready to go. Something happens going in or out of a port, you don't want to be running around going, what's the RLNI's number? What channel are they on? What do I call? You want them literally handy on your plan. Okay, and then obviously you want to do a safe route. Okay, now when you get to doing a pilotage for real, I actually scribble it on a piece of paper and have it in my pocket on deck. Something like that, going from this buoy to that buoy, this bearing to that bearing. That's exactly sort of what I want to do. And I will bring myself in along buoys like this with notes. A pilot plan should be made before entering or exiting any port. That's fairly obvious. It might well be done through general knowledge or a common port of use. So when we go in and out of Portsmouth, like the photograph is, that's Portsmouth Harbour, I know all those numbers off by heart, I know the route off by heart, and I just check the tide in the morning before we go. Okay, I know where the ferries go and all that sort of thing. I don't need to write it out every time, but I'll check my tide and I'll call the port control and all that sort of thing. So you're actually doing a pilotage plan without writing it out. Unknown ports, you would be very unwise not to do one. Okay, things can go wrong very quickly in a port. If you're on a lee shore with a bit of tide, you can be on that shore before you know, even get a chance to get an anchor out to stop you. Okay, unknown ports, it is really unwise not to do a proper pilotage for entry and exit. This is a common sight, by the way, in Cape Town. There's a current that comes out of the harbor and it sticks the guys on this beach here very quickly. It's not uncommon. And the tugs come out, pull them off, and off they go again, because the southeaster just pins them there. Common pilotage errors. Getting your tide wrong, your tidal stream wrong, or your tidal depth wrong. Either one of those two can put you in trouble very quickly. You get washed onto rocks, you get washed onto walls, etc. Incorrect radio procedures. Okay. Harbors really get annoyed. They see yachts most of the world over. They see yachts as a pain in the butt, but they can't stop them. Recreational craft to them are a pain in the butt. We don't pay for harbor entry. We don't pay for mooring other than directly to the yacht club. Ships coming in pay them $10,000 a day. You know, they're happy with them, and they speak to them and they move them around. With us, we're a pain. It's not uncommon for a harbor master to turn around and say, whatever your name is, vessel, return to your mooring, you're getting a fine. And they'll chain you to dock until your fine's paid. It's not uncommon. And getting lost, it's a favorite in big harbors. If you look at this photograph, there's the sea out here. You've got to come through all these different gates and areas to make it to this marina. How easy would it be just go that way at night? Or you come in, you turn early and you miss the marina altogether. You getting lost is a very, very big favorite. And then you end up in this marina when you're supposed to be in the one over there. If you haven't done your pilotage, you're likely to get lost in big harbors. Favorite, go up the Hudson River and try and find your marina up there without doing pilotage. I presume you all know the Hudson River's in New York, or go into Chesapeake Bay and you're looking for a specific marina. Well, you've got to choose between one and the 1,490 marinas that are there. So you really need to know where you're going. Getting lost in Chesapeake Bay as well doesn't help because it's got lots of shallows. Okay. The nav, what considerations do we have for nav in passage planning? Obviously, first and foremost is our weather. If we're going to go across to France, remember we've had this comment already, what weather are you going to do? You're going to go for the nice weather and you're going to make sure you do it. Your weather is your first consideration before you even consider a passage. You want to look at a forecast for a short and a long range, for fairly obvious reasons. With ocean crossings, you need to take special attention to annular effects, like TRSs, which is tropical revolving storms, which hurricanes, typhoons, tornadoes, things like that, and other extreme conditions. Some of you seen southerly busters. It's a time of year thing. Hurricanes in the Atlantic are a time of year thing. So you want to make sure you're not going to be doing the Atlantic during hurricane season. The other thing is, with your forecasts, you can be doing the English Channel and there's no wind. It is just as much of a problem. Now you're bobbing out there, you haven't quite got enough fuel to motor the whole way, and you're sitting there. So no wind can be just as much of a problem as too much wind. In fact, it's more of a problem because with lots of wind, you can still reef down like this boat here and then just keep sailing. Remember, we're working off forecasts. So your plan can change, might have to change. You're supposed to be a nice downwind leg and it's ending up being a lot of beating and into the wind. You're not going to make the boat speed you had originally planned. So be flexible. You're working on a forecast, not a fact. Okay, so weather, that was the first one. Hazards. You need to know where all your hazards are. You need to know what they are and where they are. Types of hazards, well, TSSs, traffic separation zones, we've spoken about them in coal rigs, those purple things. And also marine traffic. Are there marine traffic routes where big ships are coming through all the time? Is there a harbor entrance that's going to have lots of traffic? Is there a place where these cruise liners tie up and you're going to have lots of them coming through? You know, offshore installations. Well, obviously you don't want to bump into those. Farms, fish farms. There's more and more and more of them appearing, and obviously islands. You know, you don't want to bump land, islands, rocks, all that sort of thing. You know, So you need to know where all your hazards are from a passage planning point of view, from a navigation point of view, simply so you can go around them. Tide. Here's the Isle of Wight. Here's France. We're going to go down to Cannes or Eastrum or one of these places down here. So we jump on and we point there. The tide's flowing that way. We're going to end up over here somewhere. You've got to know what your tide is doing. It can shorten or lengthen your strip considerably. You're coming from Falmouth and you're going back this way. You're going with the tide the whole way. You're going to be adding some nice speed to your speed over ground. If you're going from this side that way, you don't want to be punching tide the whole way. Okay, that tide comes back to, do you remember this slide, our course to steer? So there's a 5-hour course to steer with tide. That's our course to steer. We arced it off and it gave us a nice angle across the channel. Tide going that way, turns around, tide coming this way. So your course to steer, you would then calculate, you can do them hourly, you don't have to do a 5-hour one, or you can do them in a nice long one like this if you're doing a long straight. So if I go back again, you could do a course to steer from there to there, 60-mile trip. So you're going to do a 5-hour tide there and back, and you've got a course to steer there, which means you'll actually sail probably something like that, but you'll end up in the right place and you've calculated it. Because as you sail along, the tide will die and then the tide will come from the other side. But effectively, you're doing the straightest possible course with that. Okay, as you get bigger, you've got to take rhumb lines and great circle lines into account. Okay, remember your charts are flattened pieces of the world. Okay, so here you can see from New York to Madrid, if you go straight across on a chart, it's a hell of a lot longer, almost 200 miles longer than if you curve with the Earth, because your chart is a flattened ideal of the world. So if we just look at very, very briefly, Mercator and Nomic charts. Mercator charts are the ones we use, which are flat, and our grid system is square, whereas Nomic charts, the grid system, as you see here, are curved. So you take that same rhumb line and you put it onto a Nomic chart, that's what it looks like. So therefore your great circle route is quicker, but that's a topic all on its own, but it does need to be taken into account when you're doing long trips, because it makes a big difference in time. That's a whole day sailing.